Good evening, friends. Welcome back. On behalf of the Vedika team, I invite you all for today's session again, Artificial Intelligence, Ideology and Reality towards a Marxist critique. I am Ramakrishna, RK Prasad. I studied engineering at Uthmania University College of Engineering. I'm currently in the IT industry. Today we played the song Man Machine by Robbie Williams. Many of you may know this. The song plays with the idea of the narrator feeling partly machine, partly human, a man machine. It explores a blending of humanity and artificiality, struggles with identity, with being on, even when emotionally drained, feeling distant or alienated as if a machine, at still having human desires and flaws, keeping going, performing, hiding vulnerability. There's a humor mixed with existential questions. So I thought this can probably relate to our topic of man in this AI world with a good beat to it. Now, for your kind reference, here are the guidelines for all the participants in the discussion. Firstly, this is an audio meeting. This program is being live streamed on Vedika's Facebook page and YouTube channels. Links have been shared on the Discord platform text channel. If any of your friends do not have the Discord application and wish to listen to the speech, do share these links with them. And for better audio clarity of voice, it's suggested to use earphones and broadband internet for the whole period of the session. Next, one can see questions information text channel as part of the Vedika Discord platform. You may post your questions in the same channel. Please post them only after the moderator invites questions towards the end of the speech, not to distract the speaker or the listeners during the speech. Those listening on YouTube, Facebook can also ask questions in the comments box of their respective handles. The speaker will answer the most important ones from these handles. Priority will be given to questions received on Discord. Hence, we urge you all to join through Discord. And now, into today's topic of discussion, let me try to create context from yesterday for a good continuation. We had an intriguing session yesterday touching upon several aspects of artificial intelligence. The speaker took us through a systematic and scientific approach from basic definition of AI, its historical evolution, current euphoria and paranoia, as he called it, created by the same hegemonic classes to hype it on one side and fast track further investments on the other, underlining how they are shaping social consent and consciousness. To understand this whole jargon, speaker stressed the need to understand the science behind it as a first step. To achieve it, we have gone through a simplistic classroom style journey using basic examples of how AI works, data inputs in creation of linear graphs, and what it really means inside that black box, and how huge the approximations are in the outputs. Then he expanded it on how ChatGPT like large language models work, how these models simply go through billions of iterations of training, similar to neurons in human brains, but on the data created by human labor, just to blindly predict next words in the so-called autocomplete on steroids. Here, one should understand that it is not creating something totally new, but just doing interpolations and extrapolations of existing data created by humans. Next, he beautifully compared and contrasted this with traditional means of production. While traditional manufacturing converts human physical labor into industrial automation, AI converts human intellectual labor to AI automation here. So that is how he connects it to Marxist theory of general social labor involved in this whole AI process. This way, he perfectly sets the stage and the need for understanding this new AI era in its totality, not just in terms of scientific aspects, but in its socio-economic and historical progression with the contradictions and frictions involved. That is, after all, the foundation of Marxist approach, as we all know, right? So analyzing every aspect of the world from the historical and dialectical materialistic viewpoint. So today we will focus on this side of the coin. What role does it play in the current capitalist order, and how might it affect the struggle to transcend capitalism? So without much delay, let me briefly introduce our speaker again, Comrade Bipin Balaram, an engineer by education. He had a PhD in mechanical engineering. Now he is serving as a research faculty at the Lord's University of Technology, Poland. He is a Marxist political analyst and is actually associated with the Marx Circle, Kerala. He also runs a blog, Revolutionary Spring, where we can read his writings and critiques. Comrade Bipin is well known within Vedika circles as well, who has already spoken on the topic. So like why Professor Prabhat Patnaik wants us to forget Lenin. These videos can be found on Vedika YouTube channel. So Comrade Bipin, when you are ready, please unmute your mic and start your speech. Thank you.
Thank you for the nice introduction. So as was alluded to in the introduction, yesterday we investigated the scientific and socio-historic aspects of artificial intelligence and came to certain important conclusions regarding AI. I would like to remind you of the two main conclusions that we came up with, which will be used in today's talk also. The first one being that AI is the extension of automation to newer domains, in particular to the domain of intellectual labor. And the second one being that when AI automates intellectual labor, it leans very heavily, it utilizes what Karl Marx has called the general social labor, the general social labor created in the intellectual domain, or products of the social brain, as Marx called it. So when AI comes up with results, it is actually utilizing the general social labor or the products of the social brain, which have been crystallized and consolidated by human endeavors over millennia. So armed with these important insights into the science and socio-historic aspects of AI, we can now, in today's lecture, try to attack two different questions. The first one on the ideology of AI, and the second one on the political economy of AI. We saw yesterday that the main claims made by artificial intelligence enthusiasts regarding its prospects, the main claims being that AI is a project to create thinking systems, and AI is already intelligent and can already think in a rudimentary fashion. And AI is creative, they say, and it is also claimed that AI will soon attain human level intelligence and will become conscious in near future. These are the claims that AI enthusiasts make, and we saw these yesterday. The main assumption or the main hypothesis or axiom behind these claims is that human intelligence, human creativity, or human consciousness are all the results of computational processes or are results of information processing, the processing of information. This is the real assumption behind these claims. And the foundation of this assumption is the ideology associated with AI, which goes under the name of computational functionalism. Computational functionalism is a philosophical outlook, is a school of thought, which has now become the official ideology of AI enthusiasts. This ideology, computational functionalism, or this philosophical outlook or school of thought, comes from a parent philosophical standpoint called functionalism, which was developed in relation to the philosophy of mind. Around 1950s, around 1960s, people like Hilary Putnam and his philosophical colleagues developed the school of thought called functionalism, and this was developed, as I told you, in relation to the philosophy of mind. What we call mind or thought or consciousness or thinking process have always baffled humanity. The reason being very simple, because we know that the fundamental constituents of matter, however you see it, even if it is atom or molecules or electrons or nucleons or whatever, the fundamental constituents of matter do not have these properties. They do not have a mind, they do not think, they do not have consciousness, they have no thoughts. Then the question is, how come that we have all these when the truth remains that we are made up only of matter? So we are made up of these constituents, fundamental constituents of matter. We are matter. But by magic, we seem to possess properties like thought, mind, consciousness, emotions, etc., which matter in its pure form do not have. So this has been a central philosophical question from the time philosophy began, and many answers have been given to it. Marxism, the philosophy of dialectical materialism, has also something to say about this, which we will come to a little later. But around 1950s, from 1910, 1920 to 1950s, the main scientific idea regarding this was called identity theory. And identity theory stated that each mental state, by mental state, we mean a thought that we have or a desire that we have, for example, the desire to have ice cream, or the pain that we feel, the joy that we feel. These are all mental states. These are all characterized as mental states. And identity theory put forward the idea that these mental states are identical with some state of the brain. For example, we feel pain when brain is in a particular state, or when the portion, the neurons in a particular portion of the brain starts firing. Then we feel pain. We feel joy when the brain is in a different state. So each mental state is directly mapped to a brain state. But around 1950s, functionalism, a new school of thought called functionalism, came about, and then said that that is not true. Mental states are not in one-to-one correspondence with brain state. But instead of that, it came up with the idea that mental states are can be defined as particular functional organization of the brain. So functional organization, by functional organization, functionalism means two things. It involves two things. The first one is the internal organization, the internal constitution, how it is connected, how the connections involved, the whole structure, the whole organization of the brain. And the second aspect is the input-output structure of the brain as such and all its constituent part. So what functionalism is saying is that the mental states that we feel are not the consequence of brain states, but are the consequences of particular functional organization. This also means that if we can realize these functional organization, these connections, these input-output relations in a different medium other than the brain, then that medium would also feel desire, pain, joy, etc. So what functionalism basically means is that we do not need a brain to feel something, to have mental state. Any substratum, any medium in which this functional organization is realized will also have that particular thought, that particular desire, that particular joy, and in particular, it will also have consciousness, because consciousness can also be characterized as a particular mental state. So computational functionalism is the evolved form of this philosophical idea. And computational functionalism takes this idea one step further in saying that, in claiming that the kind of functional organization that matters as far as consciousness and as far as intelligence is considered is computational in nature. So what computational functionalism claims is that thinking or feeling joy or feeling pain or consciousness, these are all a consequence of rule-governed computations or a consequence of information processing. So what happens in the brain is when we feel pain, a particular computation is happening in the brain. If we can realize that particular computation on a different medium, like a computer, then computational functionalism claims that the computer can also feel this pain. So in this case, computational functionalism sees the connection between brain and mind as the connection between hardware and software in a device. For example, we see that we know that the same software can be realized or can be run on different hardwares. Take the case of this Discord. This app Discord can be hosted on a desktop. Probably many of you are seeing it in the desktop, or it can be run on an iPhone or an Android phone or many other devices which have different hardware constitution. But the software can be run on all of these hardwares. In the same way, computational functionalism says or claims that mind is the consequence of computation, and if this computation is, this is the computation that is happening in the brain, but it can happen in any other medium also. All that we need is this computation to happen, this information processing to happen. So what it does is that it separates thought or intelligence or consciousness directly from the brain. It says that it is not a property of the brain, but brain is needed only for realizing this computation. If you realize it on a different medium, you will get the same effect there, which means that you will that medium will have joy or will feel joy or will feel pain or will be conscious. So this is the idea of computational functionalism, and this is the ideology of AI. And all present claims regarding AI comes from this ideology, from this basis. Before we go to the merit of this argument, we have to see this argument, we have to locate this argument in its historical setting first. Before that, I assume that you would have understood how this relates to a neural network or an AI system. If consciousness is only computation, then this very complicated computation, if you can carry it out using a neural network, then the neural network or the LLM or the AI system will become conscious. So this is the basis on which AI enthusiasts claim that AI systems, in particular neural networks, in particular LLMs, are going to be conscious very soon. So, as I told you, this claim, we will come to the merit of this claim for sure. But before that, we have to locate this claim in history, because this kind of claim is not new. We have seen this before. I would like to remind you, I would like to take you back to the 17th century when machines were becoming popular, when mechanization was becoming popular, when automation was becoming popular. 17th century was the beginning of what we now call the industrial age. And in the beginning of this industrial age, a school of thought, a philosophy developed, which we now call by the names mechanism or mechanical philosophy. It's a machine age philosophy. And the main claim of this philosophy was that human body is a complex machine. So we see that history is indeed repeating itself, but this time not as tragedy, but as sheer joke, as Marx said. Because in 17th century, during the beginning of the machine age, we get a philosophy by the name of mechanism or mechanical philosophy, which claimed that human body is a complex machine. Now, in the information technology age, in the computer science age, when we are in the cusp of developing automation of intellectual labor, we get a philosophy which calls itself computational functionalism and claims that human mind is computation. So please see the similarity between these things. Mechanism claiming that human body is a machine, and computational functionalism claiming that human mind is a computation. Descartes, the great French mathematician, philosopher, scientist, was one of the main proponents of this philosophy. And in his book, Discourse on Method, very famous book, Discourse on Method, written in 1637, he says this: every body is a machine. There is no difference of principle between the machines made by men and the living bodies engendered by God. The only difference being that of perfection and complexity. So here he says that every body is a machine and humans are machines made by God. Thomas Hobbes, at the same time, Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher, a very famous English philosopher. At the same time, around 1651, in his book, claimed the following. He says, "What is the heart but a spring, and the nerves but so many strings, and the joints but so many wheels?" So here is an attempt by mechanism or mechanical philosophy to see or to model the human body as nothing but a machine. And this has come into being when machines were being developed. So we can see the similarity. When industrial machines were being developed, a philosophy comes into being saying that human body is a machine. And when computational systems are being developed, a philosophy comes into being saying that human mind is a computation. So that is why I said that this is not new. We have seen this before. In fact, Thomas Hobbes does not stop there. He doesn't just say that heart is a spring, nerves are strings, and joints can be seen as wheels. But in fact, he anticipates much of computational functionalism. In the same book in 1651, he says, "By reasoning, I understand computation. And to compute is to collect the sum of many things added together at the same time. Therefore, to reason is the same as to add or subtract." So this was written by Thomas Hobbes in 1651, where he says that by reasoning, he understands computation, adding and subtraction. The basic computation that we have at that point of time, we're adding and subtraction. So this is the same thing that computational functionalism is saying now. Thinking, reasoning, consciousness is nothing but a computation. Complex computation, of course, but computation nevertheless. And not so surprisingly, Thomas Hobbes anticipates not just computational functionalism, but the AI ideology in full when he says in the same book this: why may we not say that all automata have an artificial life? He asks a question. He asks a question about automata. And by automata, he means automated machines, engines that move themselves by springs, wheels, etc. So he asks, why may we not say that all automata, all machines have an artificial life? So he says that, he first says that human body is a machine. He claims that all reasoning and all thinking are just computation. And then he also says that why we may not consider machines as having an artificial life. Now, computational functionalism tells us that LLMs can have an artificial life. So the close affinity between 17th century mechanism and 20th century computational functionalism is very clear from these things. And while mechanical philosophy claimed that body is a mechanism, body is a machine, computational functionalism claims that mind is a computation. This has scientific reasons to it. I mean, not scientific reasons, but reasons related to the growth of science to it, because in the 17th century, the scientific domain, the most advanced scientific domain, was the domain called mechanics, what we call classical mechanics now, or engineering mechanics now. This was the most advanced scientific domain in the 17th century, probably in the 18th and the 19th century. Mechanics ruled the world. Classical mechanics and all kinds of scientists from Isaac Newton, Lagrange, all of these scientists were working in mechanics. And the automation and industrial machinery were all built by using the scientific and technological knowledge given by mechanics. So Engels talks in Anti-Düring that because mechanics was the most advanced scientific domain, philosophy followed, or philosophy attained, a mechanical trend, which we call mechanical philosophy. In the 20th century, or the 21st century in which we are now, this role is being given to computer science. Maybe computer science is not the most advanced scientific domain now, but it is definitely the most important scientific domain with direct contact with productive forces, development of productive forces. And it is at the root of automation of intellectual labor and development of AI. So it is not a surprise that computational functionalism takes mind as a computation. So there is close affinity between these two things. And that's not a coincidence, as we will see. So we can see a common trend here. And the common trend is interesting. What we have is, we have science making machines which are modeled on some aspect of human labor. And then this machine starts to automate human labor. And once the machine takes the place of human labor, a philosophy develops which projects this back and which tries to reduce human essence to machines. This has happened before during industrial automation. This is happening now during AI revolution. In both cases, the development of machines gives rise to a philosophy that reduces human essence to an automation. First, in the case of 17th century, it was industrial automation. Now it is computational automation. So the mechanical philosophy can be seen as a form of mechanical reductionism, reducing the human essence, the essence of human body, completely to a machine. And computational functionalism now can be seen as computational reductionism, reductionism of human mind, reductionism of thought, reductionism of the whole consciousness to one aspect alone, which is computation. That is why I like to call this not computational functionalism, but the computational dogma associated with the ideology of AI. There is no doubt at all that computation is a very important aspect of the working of the brain. And computation and information processing, by all means, is an extremely important aspect in developing of thoughts, in developing of states of mind, in developing of emotions, in developing of consciousness. There is no doubt regarding this. But it is only a particular aspect. It's only one aspect. It surely does not exhaust the full possibility of the brain. You cannot say that the essence of the brain is in its computation. That is not true. That is definitely not true. There are many other aspects to the brain, many other aspects which we already know, and many, many more aspects which we do not know, which are unknown to us. So this reducing of the whole working of the brain to a computational structure, to a computational process is definitely a reduction. And that is why I call it the computational dogma. It is not even clear, if you follow the most latest neuroscience, it is not even clear whether the basic aspect of the working of the brain is computation or information processing. It is definitely one aspect. It is an important aspect, but it is not clear at all whether it is a basic aspect. And every year that passes, it is emerging that it may not be a basic aspect. For example, the theory of computation is an important scientific tool to study processes in the brain, but other scientific approaches to study processes in the brain are also emerging. Like there is this approach called dynamical systems approach, which sees the whole brain in its totality and then sees it as a dynamical system. And this approach, in which I also work in my scientific career a little bit, in this approach has been very successful in recent years in explaining many of the properties of the brain, like memory loss, like epileptic seizures, and many such things, using ideas which are not computational in nature, but which have a different perspective called dynamical systems perspective. So in this way, I would like to tell you that computation is an aspect of thought process, but it is not clear whether it's a basic aspect. And I am certain that the essence of thinking process or human consciousness cannot be reduced to computation. That is exactly what computational functionalism tries to do. And as we saw before, it's not a new thing. It is history repeating itself, but this time as a joke. Mechanical reductionism now being repeated as computational reductionism. Now, the problem does not end there with AI ideology. The problem remains that if we capture, computational functionalism says that if we capture the computation, the information processing in the brain, and do it in another system, then that system will become conscious and will become intelligent. But how will we check whether that has become intelligent or not? For example, we find out the information processing in the brain and put it in an AI system, and then tells that AI system to process the same information. How do we know whether this AI system has become intelligent or even conscious? Now, for this, AI ideology leans very heavily on what is called Turing test. This test was derived or devised by the British mathematician Alan Turing in 1950, when he wrote a very influential paper called Can Machines Think? So in this paper, Turing asked a very interesting question. Is it possible for machines to think? So he clearly says in the beginning itself that to directly answer this question is a hopeless thing. We cannot answer the question because we cannot directly define what thinking means. Instead of defining thinking or intelligence in a direct manner, Turing suggests an indirect approach to this question, which has come to be known now as the imitation game. So in this test, what is done is that a human interacts with two participants out of which one is a human and another one is a machine. So this interaction, this conversation is a text-only conversation, and these participants are hidden. They are in another room. There are 3 rooms in which in one a human is there, and in other 2, in one room there is another human, and in the next room there is a computer or an information processing device or an AI. Now Turing says that during interaction, text-only conversation with these 2, with this human and the AI system, if the human cannot reliably tell which is which, then we can say that the machine has developed the ability to think or has become intelligent. This is the essence of what we call Turing test now. So what Turing means is that if the machine in its interaction with human beings can imitate a human without generating any doubt, then it can be said, it can be claimed that this machine has the ability to think. Now, the Turing test is a very useful thought experiment, and it can be used in theory of computation in the theoretical sense for many things, in particular in developing better AI systems. But this test, if you view it as a test of human intelligence, of human thinking capacity, it is hopelessly reductionist and narrow. And it is not very clear that even Turing intended this test as a test for thinking or of intelligence. It was more of a thought experiment for scientific purposes. But now, how AI ideology uses this is as a test of thinking. You can see popular magazines or popular media saying that this AI has passed Turing test, this LLM has passed Turing test, invoking the golden standard in AI ideology that passing the Turing test means automatically that some machine is intelligent or conscious or has developed thinking capacity, which is in fact at some point absurd and reductionist and very narrow. Because we saw yesterday that imitating human actions, imitating human intellectual labor, automating human intellectual labor using AI systems can be done very easily with the help of utilization of crystallized general social labor, as we explained in yesterday's lecture. By utilizing general social labor or productive capacity of social brain in a crystallized form, by training your neural network using this generalized social labor, we can easily imitate human actions. We can easily automate human labor. That doesn't prove that this machine which is doing that has become intelligent. It just means that it has developed the capacity to interpolate and correlate using general social labor. So this test that AI ideology uses, and it uses it now maybe in some slightly different form, slightly involved form, but still the basis is this test. And this test is very reductionist and narrow. There has been many critiques on this idea of Turing test or imitation game to test intelligence. Probably the most famous one is an argument, another thought experiment suggested by the American philosopher of mind, John Searle, in 1980. This is called the Chinese room argument. And in this, we have to imagine a person in a room. This person is sitting in a room, and this room is completely cordoned off. There is no way in which this person can somehow talk to other people. And this person who is in the room does not know Chinese at all. But other people outside the room try to interact with this person in Chinese. Even though this person doesn't know Chinese, he or she has a rule book which completely states how to manipulate Chinese symbols. It's a very thick rule book. And using this rule book, this person inside the room can interact with Chinese, to persons who know Chinese in Chinese itself. That is by using this rule book to manipulate Chinese symbols. This doesn't mean to the outside, from the outside, it looks like the person inside understands Chinese and knows Chinese, is very conversant in Chinese, but we know that he doesn't or she doesn't. The truth remains that the person inside is just manipulating the rule book of Chinese symbols, or is just following some formal rules. So in this case, the Turing machine would say, the perspective of Turing machine, Turing test would say that the person inside understands Chinese, but that is not true. The person is just following some formal rules. This is the same in another very relatable example that we can have of cheating in exams. For example, let us say I am taking a mathematics exam. I have 5 questions. I don't know anything. Let's say this is a test on some profit or loss, 8th standard profit or loss. I don't know what profit is. I don't know what loss is. I know nothing. But I have enough copy materials with me, what we call cheats, with all formulas, all instructions of what to do, etc. So when I get a question, I use these copy material, these formulas that I have, and the instructions that is given to manipulate the mathematical symbols and arrive at the answer. So using this, I solve all the 5 questions and put the exam paper, and the examiner has to give me full marks. So when I get full marks, it means that I understand profit and loss. But the fact remains that I have just copied, that I don't understand anything at all. If you take the cheats away from me, I'm lost. So, but in this case, an AI enthusiast, a supporter of Turing test, may counter the Chinese room argument or the copying argument that I have given by this argument. The AI enthusiast may say, but see what happens if a question comes which cannot be easily answered by the direct formula that you have in your copying material, that needs a little bit of thought. In that instance, you will be found out. So in Turing test, the interactor can ask any question. Interactor can interact in any way he or she wants. If the machine can successfully deal with all these conversations in a human-like manner, then only it is characterized as having intelligence. Here, it is in this perspective that our yesterday's example of general social intelligence and interpolation of this general social intelligence using curve fitting becomes very important. We saw yesterday that in AI, in large language models, it is not necessary that the phrase or the text that we input into our LLM is exactly the same as the training material. We can input a text, we can input a part of the text or a phrase which the machine has not been trained with. Still, by interpolation, by establishing correlation with the things that it has been trained with, the LLM can come up with reasonable answers, with reasonable follow-up words. In the same way, an artificial intelligence, an LLM system, can easily come up with conversation material which it is not completely trained with. This does not mean that the AI system understands it. This doesn't mean that AI system has started thinking, this only means that it is equipped with the power of interpolation or of correlation using very large amount of data. So in this discussion, it comes out, two things comes out. One is that the ideology of AI is directly connected to the claim of computational functionalism. And computational functionalism is not a new thing. It's a new age version of mechanical philosophy of the 17th century. And this new age version is doing the same mistakes of mechanism that mechanism did in 17th century. And our discussion also tells us that the definition, the test for intelligence devised or used by AI ideology now, which is the Turing test, is a very reductionist and narrow test. And in no way, it can be used in no way to check understanding, genuine understanding, consciousness, or intelligence in the human case. It is a very valuable thought experiment for scientific purposes, for development of AI systems and computer systems, that is all. American neuroscientist Anil Seth, in one of his recent articles, has an important point to make, which I will read out here. He says, nobody expects a computer simulation of a hurricane to generate real wind and real rain. In the same way, a computer model of the brain may only ever simulate consciousness, but never give rise to it. So what he says, and this is a very famous example that he gives, we can simulate a hurricane or a rainstorm on a computer. We can have climate models and simulate a hurricane or a rainstorm on a computer. That doesn't mean that it is going to rain inside a computer. So when we realize or simulate a particular process in a different medium, on a different domain, there is, in fact, the effect of this process does not come in that domain. So this is Anil Seth's take on the difference between simulation and realization, and that is very important for computational functionalism. Even if we somehow recreate this whole computation on different medium, thought or consciousness will not be realized in that. It will just be simulated there. Because human thought, as we know, is not just a computational process. It's not just an interpolation or data fitting process. It has abstraction. We are capable of abstracting. We are capable of establishing causality. We are capable of the process called abduction, where you make or devise conjectures, good guesses, etc. None of these happens in an AI system, as we know right now. So we can safely say that there is no understanding, no creativity, no intelligence in AI systems. There is only interpolation and correlation, using the results of general social labor and social brain. This is not a bad thing. This gives us really fantastic results, but it is not what AI ideology claims it is. It is just automation of intellectual labor, and it is not giving rise to intelligence or consciousness or thinking. Let us take the example of large language models. In large language models, as we talked yesterday, words are self-referential in nature. By this I mean that words are seen in connection with other words alone. For example, a word rock. An LLM sees a word rock, and all that it can figure out is where this word rock will come with respect to other words, with respect to other phrases, other sentences, other paragraphs. So as far as an LLM is concerned, a word like rock is self-referential in the sense that it only makes sense in connection with other words. But we know human beings know that that is not true. The word rock is a word for a reality, for a real object. This connection with reality is not present in LLM. In its case, this word is a word among other millions of words. But for us, for human beings, this word stands for a real object. And we know that real creativity, reality is the source or the wellspring of real creativity. If you ask ChatGPT or Gemini, yesterday I said Gemini, and one of my friends told me that it is pronounced Gemini. So I will pronounce as Gemini today. So if we give any LLM the order or the prompt to produce a novel or a poem, it will write a poem for you. Tell ChatGPT, write a poem on butterflies. It will write a poem on butterflies. And at first sight, this will seem as if it is a creative process. And if you have not read many poems, then it will definitely seem very creative to you. But that is not true. There is no creative process at all. It's just correlating and interpolating from all the poems that it has already seen. And it has already been trained on. So there is no creativity here. Because creativity, if you write a poem on butterfly, creativity comes by understanding that butterfly is a reality. And it is this reality that breeds creativity. It is a source of creativity. As long as this reality, the connection to reality is missing, as long as words are just words and are self-referential nature as in LLM, there can be no creativity at all. It is just permutation or combination or juxtaposition which is happening in LLMs. So the basic mistake of AI ideology, as we see now, is that it separates thought or consciousness from brain, which is matter. So a separation of consciousness and separation of consciousness from matter is affected by computational functionalism, the AI ideology. And this thought and consciousness is made a property of a computation, of an information processing. Now, this is a very dangerous thing to do, and it has been done many times before by idealist philosophers. But we know from dialectical materialism that thought, consciousness, pain, thinking, etc. are nothing but emergent properties of brain, emergent properties of highly organized matter. What is brain but the most highly organized matter that we know of? In Anti-Düring, for example, Engels says that mind itself is merely the highest product of matter. And in Materialism and Empirio-Criticism, Lenin, by following Engels, says this, that thought, consciousness, sensation are all products of a highly organized matter, and he has brain in mind here. So if you separate thought and consciousness from matter, from brain, from the highly organized material entity called brain, which gives rise to these things, then you are treading on muddy water here and will soon get into trouble. And that is what happens to the AI ideology. So I would like to quote Anil Seth again, because I find this is a very interesting quote, and probably the final word on the ideology of AI, the absurdity of the ideology of AI called computational functionalism. Let me quote Seth. It is a slightly long quote, but I think it is worth it. Anil Seth says, brain activity patterns evolve over multiple scales of space and time, continuously influenced by and influencing the chemical diffusion of neurotransmitters, the physical structure of the neural network themselves, and various properties of cellular infrastructure, all deeply interwoven with a molecular storm of metabolic activity. The metaphor of the brain as a computer is an increasingly inconvenient fiction, and it seems myopic to consider all this multi-scale biological activity as simply an enabling condition for the right kind of computation. So this is beautifully put by Anil Seth, who says that there are millions of extremely complicated and complex physical, chemical, electrical processes happening in brain, some of which we know, most of which we still do not. And that is an important point. We still do not know much about the brain. We still do not know how exactly it produces a thought, how exactly it produces consciousness. These are things that we have no idea about, and these are things that will take many more, probably many more decades for us to figure out in any satisfactory manner. Computation is one aspect of this process, but it is only a particular simple aspect. It is not the essence of what happens in the brain, and it is absurd to claim, as computational functionalism says, that consciousness is just computation, and any other medium, if this computation is realized in any other medium, you will get consciousness there. So with this, I think we can wind up the discussion on the ideology of AI, computational functionalism, and then we can quickly go to the political economy of AI. This is also very important because yesterday many questions were there in the ideology also and in political economy of AI. Yesterday we said that in political economic terms, AI should be understood as automation of intellectual labor. Then the question arises, what is the motivation for automating intellectual labor? What motivation is there in 20th century for automating intellectual labor? Of course, there is scientific motivation, but scientific motivation is not truly independent. It will, and almost in all cases, it depends on a material motivation. And this material motivation is something that started happening in the 1960s and the 1970s, which is the shift of capital, the flow of capital from manufacturing to service sectors. By service sector, by manufacturing sector, I mean industrial capitalist structure sector. And by service sector, I mean sectors like healthcare, like education, entertainment, tourism, luxury, IT sector, etc., where industrial production in the traditional sense do not happen. So starting from 1960s, there is a flow of capital. If you see the statistics, world-round statistics, there is a strong flow of capital, a shift of investment from industrial sectors, from manufacturing sectors to service sectors. That can be seen in India also, in almost all countries. The main reason for this is not that capital suddenly developed a love for a service sector. The main reason regarding this is the completion of intense mechanization, intense automation, industrial manufacturing sectors, and leading to huge productivity increases there, and also leading to what Marx called a tendential fall in the rate of profit in these sectors. This is a very crucial and central concept in Marxist political economy, and it is connected with a whole lot of other things, including crisis theory, imperialism, even revolutionary possibilities, etc. We will not be able to go into this idea in any depth here, but in a common sense way, it can be understood very easily like this. See, when mechanization, when automation in a particular industry increases, Marx says, or a particular sector increases, Marx says that there is a tendency for the rate of profit in that particular industry or that particular sector to go down. This is a counterintuitive thing. Usually, by common sense, we understand, or we picture that more advanced or more industrial, more automated an industry is, more is the profit. Because we don't have to involve workers, we don't have to pay them. So more is the profit. But that is not true. It is the other way around. Why is it? The reason is this. The primary source of profit is surplus value. And the sole source of profit value, of surplus value, is human labor. You can extract surplus value only from human labor. You cannot extract surplus value from machine labor, from machines. So, when human labor is replaced by machines, what happens is that the rate of surplus value decreases. Because, as I told you, surplus value can only be extracted from human labor. By decreasing the necessary human labor, we can extract surplus value. But when you mechanize an industry more and more, it decreases the human labor which is involved. And when the human labor which is involved decreases, then the rate of surplus value decreases. And this will affect the rate of profit, and that will also record a fall. It will show a tendency to fall. It's a tendency. It is not realized in all the cases, but it is a strong tendency. This is the reason to say that when mechanization increases, in Marxist political economy, this is called the law of organic composition of capital. Organic composition of capital increases. It is the ratio between constant capital, that is the capital spent on machines, essentially, divided by the capital spent on labor wages, direct labor wages. When this increases, there is a fall in the rate of profit. So because of intense mechanization in manufacturing sector, the rate of profit in that sector started falling. This because capital investment is always in search of profit. So it means if a rate of profit falls in a particular sector, it will shift to another sector in which there is better rate of profit. And that sector is the service sector. This is why we see a shift of profit, a shift of capital, shift of investment, a flow of capital from manufacturing to service sector. For example, if we take the case of an advanced country like USA, in 2020 to 2025, the percentage of GDP, US GDP, that was involved in manufacturing sector is only 11%. And the percentage of GDP involved coming from service sector is 75%. See the difference. You may tell me that this is only true for advanced countries. It's not true for countries like India, for example, third world countries. Let us take India's statistics here. Again, in the same timeline, 2020s to 2025, the manufacturing sector percentage of GDP is 15%. 15%. But the service percentage is 45%. So the difference is not as big as in US or in Europe, like 11 and 75%, but still it is very significant. It is 15 to 45. 3 times more GDP comes from the service sector than from the manufacturing sector. So there is a clear shift. And this shift is apparent in privatization of many services, privatization of education, privatization of healthcare. Why is the government privatizing all these things? To facilitate the movement of capital to all these service sectors, because profit is there. Organic composition of capital is still very low there, and they would like to make use of that and generate profit. That is why the state is bent upon commodifying almost all service sectors. Now, this is what actually caused the need for automation of intellectual labor. Because when capitalism catches hold of a particular sector, then it wants the productivity in that sector to increase. And the productivity in that sector can only be increased by automation. So when it catches hold, when it caught hold of the service sector, then there is a material need for automation in the service sector. And almost all labor in service sector is of the intellectual variety. So there is a material motivation for automation of intellectual labor. This is the real reason, this is the real material motivation for the tremendous growth of AI over the past 15 to 20 years. In scientific literature, the growth and decay of AI are explained by means of AI summers, AI winters, etc., etc. If you see the scientific literature of AI, which has some logic to it, of course, but it misses the main point. The main point is the capitalization, the commodification of the service industry. That is what is the main motivation of the main political economic motivation of the tremendous growth of AI over the past 15 to 20 years. This automation has very significant effects. In particular, this AI affected automation of service sector or this AI affected automation of intellectual labor is a very significant step in the socialization of production. I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with this phrase, socialization of production. But if anybody is not very familiar with it, it means that pre-industrial production, production in pre-industrial phase or production in pre-capitalist phase in particular, was predominantly individual production. For example, somebody is making let's say, a cart, a vehicle drawn by a horse cart. So this is an individual person or an individual workshop, which may be housing 2 or 3 workers, making this. The whole horse cart will be made in that particular workshop. And it will be given to the king or whoever has given money for that. So this is basically an individual production. Contrast that with the production of a vehicle or an automotive now, for example, a car. Now the tire of the car is made in some other place, the window of the car is made in some other place, the clutch is made somewhere, the brake is made somewhere, the gear is made somewhere, the body is made somewhere. It is only assembled in the main plant. So what has happened is, due to widespread division of labor, the labor process, the whole production process has become socialized. And that increases the productivity manifold, and that gives, that prepares the objective conditions for mankind going to a better or a more advanced socio-economic phase. It prepares all the objective conditions needed for transcending of capitalist phase. This socialization of production has happened in industrial production due to automation. It has been growing over the past century, but now socialization of production is coming as a result of AI. It is coming to intellectual labor also. For example, almost all intellectual labors, almost all labor in intellectual domain were individual labor till now. Example, let us say we are drafting a manual for some particular washing machine or something like that. A company is launching a new washing machine, and I am, for example, told to draft the manual for that. The information is given to me, and then this is intellectual labor. I have to draft it. I should have technical knowledge. I should have the language necessary for that, etc. So I draft it. It's a 30-page document which we keep with the washing machine to be given to any customer. Now, this is individual labor, but now, or it will be done by a few laborers together. That is also, in a sense, individual labor. But now with AI, this labor, this intellectual labor has been socialized. Because you give the same information, technical information to the AI, it will draft this manual in a matter of seconds. So what 3 or 4 laborers will take 2 weeks to do, an AI system utilizing the social brain, the consequences of social brain, will do this very easily in 2 seconds. So in the same way, in almost all service sectors, the introduction of AI and the automation of intellectual labor due to AI will give rise to socialization of production. And this socialization of production will create, as I told you, will create all objective conditions necessary for us transcending this capitalism and moving to a better socio-economic order. But due to this socialization of production, will there be any lightening of human labor? Will human labor, human intellectual labor become, will it be lightened? The logical answer that we have to give is that, when machines come, then human labor will be simplified, isn't it? We will not have to work as hard as we had to before, because now machines will do all the job. In the same way, when automation of intellectual labor comes, when AI takes over most of the labor in intellectual domain service sectors, we may think that our teaching, our labor as a doctor, our labor as a manager, etc., will be simplified, and humans will get to enjoy life more with light labor. But that's not true. That's not true. That is not true in capitalism at all, because in capital, Marx says this. John Stuart Mill says in his Principles of Political Economy, it is questionable if all the mechanical inventions yet made have lightened the day's toil of any human being. That is, however, by no means the aim of the application of machinery under capitalism. Like every other instrument for increasing the productivity of labor, machinery is intended to cheapen commodities. The machine is a means of producing surplus value. This is what Marx says in Capital. You can see many other quotes in Capital also similar to this, which says that introduction of automation, introduction of machine, may it be in industrial labor, manual labor, or intellectual labor, will in no sense lighten the load of human labor, because that is not the main reason for introduction of machinery. The introduction of automation or machine is for producing much more surplus value and cheapening the commodities. It is so, as always, all the technological process, all the automation process that will happen due to AI will not benefit mankind at all. It will only benefit the bearers of capital. They will make much more profit in the beginning and be of no benefit to the common man or to the toiling class. But this will have, as always, it's a dialectical process. Any introduction of new technology and new scientific endeavor is a dialectical process, and it will have degrading as well as very positive objective effects. But one of the effects it will have is that it will never lighten human labor. It will, in particular, intensify, make it more precarious, make human labor much more precarious, much more intense than before. But what it will lead to is some important effects. One thing is that I told you that the flow of capital from manufacturing sector to service sector was prompted by the fall of the rate of profit in the manufacturing sector. But once it has captured the service sector, capital is hugely increasing the automation in the service sector, and the developments in AI, large language models, in deep learning, in many other AI techniques over the last 2-3 years is going to have a huge effect in service sectors, and automation in service sectors will be increased many-fold in the next 2 to 3 years. What that means is that with this automation in service sector, with this mechanization of service sector, the rate of profit in the service sector will also start to fall in near future. Which means that capital, which has come from manufacturing sector to service sector in search of more rate of profit, will find very soon that the rate of profit has also started dipping in service sector because of the introduction of automation. This is bad news for capitalism, because then it will intensify all the internal contradictions of capitalism and most probably intensify or make worse the crisis of capitalism, which is already there. Now, the crisis of capitalism, the incessant crisis of capitalism from 2008, 2010 onwards has been kept under control a little bit by the growth in AI industries, the bubble of AI industries and service sectors. Now, if there is a fall in rate of profit in those industries, then it will affect the whole system of capitalism in a very bad sense, and it will intensify all the contradictions, existing contradictions. Another important factor that this will cause, which is subjective in nature, is that it will increase human alienation manifold. The human alienation is increased almost by automation, and the first bout of automation in industrial sector had led to alienation. That was studied by Marx in its full scope, and now we are in for another worse effect of alienation as we automate intellectual labor. So that is another subjective effect that is going to happen. Another effect in political economy is going to be the intensification of monopoly. We don't have much time to go deeper into this. This is a very interesting topic, but we can already see that monopolization will have a huge fillip because of automation of intellectual labor. Because the companies that can afford these very costly AI systems will be monopolies. And in that sense, it will introduce monopoly into service sector also. And this will contribute. We know that monopoly is what causes imperialism. And this will cause the intensification of imperialism and imperialist rivalries. That is another effect, political economic effect that this is going to cause. Many other political economic factors remain. I have only touched upon the major factors or the major interesting things, political economic effects that AI can have. In conclusion, we can say that AI, in political economic terms, will liberate us from the need to perform repetitive, mundane, intellectual labor. Because writing a manual for a washing machine is not a labor that is worthy of a human being. It is extremely good if a machine takes over that labor, because it doesn't need a human for that. There is technical there are technical information, and that technical information has to be phrased in a standard form so that some instructions can be given to the consumer. This is an intellectual labor, if performed by a human being, is a very mundane thing, very repetitive thing. And the AI and automation of these kind of intellectual labors and many other intellectual labor connected to this, similar to this, if automated by AI, has the effect of liberating human beings from these kind of labors and preparing the objective conditions for humans to perform creative labor in arts, humanities, and science. What we are doing now in intellectual domains is now dog labor. So if AI takes over, if automation of intellectual labor takes over these activities, then the time and leisure of human beings are liberated to perform real creative labor in arts and science. That is the objective effect that AI is going to have. But the result of these objective effects will not accrue to human beings, to humanity at this point, because at this point AI is working inside the system of capitalism. And inside the system of capitalism, as Marx said, this automation, this great technical development will be used only for increasing productivity and for increasing or cheapening the commodities of intellectual labor. And it will be only used as a means, as Marx says, as a means of producing surplus value. So even though there is socialization of production, the appropriation will still be private, as always in capitalism. Even when socialization of production creeps into intellectual domain and then automation of intellectual labor is almost complete, but still the fruits of all these things will be privately appropriated. And this privately appropriated is not a problem of AI, but it is a problem of the system in which AI operates right now. And in order to liberate, in order to feel the effect, or in order to enjoy the real effect of AI, we will have to transcend capitalism. As always, technological developments, if mankind as a whole should get, or in order for mankind to get the real advantages of any technical development, we have to transcend capitalism. But the important thing here, as I have told you, is that the development of AI will intensify the contradictions of capitalism. It will create all the objective conditions needed for us going to another much more humane and much more developed socio-economic order. And it will also lead to widespread socialization of production, also in intellectual labor. So with this, I think we have come to the end of this talk. We can wind it up now. The main ideas that I wanted to discuss today were the ideology of AI. I told you that the ideology of AI is basically computational functionalism. We discussed computational functionalism, and then we saw why computational functionalism is mechanical philosophy or mechanism in the new age, and we saw the absurdity of computational functionalism and the definition of intelligence, and we saw why an AI system cannot be intelligent, or cannot have thought, or cannot have consciousness. Then we went to the political economic ideas, political economic content of AI related to automation of intellectual labor, the motivation of automation of intellectual labor, and the effects that this automation can have in socialization of production, in liberation of humanity from mundane intellectual labor, and in the intensification of contradictions in capitalism due to crisis, monopoly, and imperialism. So with these words, I conclude the talk. If there are questions, then I'll be very happy to take it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Bipin. It was a very intense talk. Please take a couple of minutes break, and meanwhile, I shall make some important announcements. Okay. So before we go into the questions, as mentioned in the beginning of the session, please post your questions in the Discord questions information text channel that you can see here within the Vedika platform. Those listening on YouTube, Facebook can ask their questions in the comment box. The speaker will answer the most important ones from those handles. Priority will be given to questions received on Discord. Then we are making these speeches held at Vedika available on the Vedika YouTube channel. So, so far, close to 200 speeches are available. So by subscribing to the channel, you can easily listen to the recorded speeches and share them with your friends. Details of the Vedika sessions and programs can be followed on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Links have been shared in the questions information text channel for your easy access. Vedika also manages a WhatsApp group to share details of the platform sessions, materials provided by the speakers, and YouTube records details. Only admins are allowed to post there. Link has been shared in the questions information text channel. Those who have not joined so far can join through this link. You can share the link with your friends as well. Alongside these, Vedika also has an open forum to share your comments, remarks, knowledge, or additional information on the topics discussed in the Vedika sessions, or other contemporary issues and fundamental Marxist theoretical aspects. Feel free to use this when the session is not taking place to avoid distracting the session. Okay. So let us get into the questions now. It's a comment initially by Gopal61 sent yesterday. What is the most astonishing part of the AI revolution is actually not AI, but how intellectual labor and so-called creative processes have become mechanical, repetitive, and mundane in the highly advanced, service-based, and cutting-edge political economy of USA. Academics, consulting, media, entertainment, literary activities, even research, all are coming under the purview of automation and therefore AI. So just as physical laborers in a previous age, now intellectual laborers such as engineers, scientists, doctors, lawyers, writers, etc. are becoming more and more alienated in the AI age. It will be interesting to know what the speaker thinks about the future path of the society in this scenario.
A very important question. Very important question. In fact, very interesting question also. Now, yesterday we saw Marx's idea regarding automation in industrial age. Marx in Grundrisse develops a very important idea that automation is not the result of using machines. Marx says that automation is not a consequence of using machines. In fact, it is the other way around. I quoted Marx yesterday. In one of the quote, he says in Grundrisse, in the fragment of machines in Grundrisse, that machines can only be designed after automation of labor has happened in practice. So I stressed that point yesterday. And if we use that point in automation in intellectual labor, we can also see in intellectual labor that automation of intellectual labor that the questioner, that the comrade asks, is not in fact the consequence of AI, but it is the other way around. AI is the consequence of automation of intellectual labor. What do I mean by that? What do Marx mean by that? What I mean is that let us take academic labor, for example. Let us take the labor as the question states, the labor of writing articles, writing scientific articles. Now, in 99% of the cases, the labor of writing scientific articles have already been automated or have already become mechanized. It has become mechanized process. The scientist or the artist or the faculty member or the academician who is writing an article on any subject, not just science, in any subjects, art, humanities, languages, any subject, he is doing it in a mechanized way. He has already been, or he or she has been already alienated from what is produced. So automation, mechanization of intellectual labor has already been brought out by capitalism. It is after that AI does it in practice, in a mechanized manner. So to blame AI for this mechanization, I think, will not be correct. We have to blame capitalism for this. AI is just its effect. So all the things that are said in the question are correct, or in the comment are correct. There is mechanization, there is large scale alienation among intellectual laborers, and that will be hugely intensified by the coming of AI into this. But what we have to understand is that AI is not the source of this. Capitalism is the source of this. It is capitalism that has led to this. So fighting AI or doing away with AI is not going to do anything at all to mechanization, to alienation. We have to fight capitalism itself. So some people tend to understand this, tend to say that there is a technical fix for this kind of alienation. You fight AI, you introduce, as we had free software movements before. Free software movements are definitely good. I am not against that, but it shouldn't be seen as fixing systemic problems. The problem is with the system. In the same way, here there is no technological fix for alienation in mechanization of intellectual labor. Doing away with AI is not going to have any effect. But doing away with capitalism is only will have an effect. This is a very important point, and this has to be this needs to be developed much more, but it could not be done in a talk like this.
Yeah, thank you. Then a comment by Adesh. Chip production for both CPUs and GPUs are already produced by a few companies in the world, since only TSMC in Taiwan, Samsung in South Korea are capable of production. Others like NVIDIA, AMD only design it. I think he is referring to the point of socialization of AI production.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Then, yeah. Sorry. This comment.
Is there a question after that, or just a comment?
No. It was just a comment. Yeah.
Yes. So this is directly related to the monopolization that we can see due to AI, and this is going to intensify, because production for AI and utilization of AI can only be done by very large scale monopolistic enterprises, and they will monopolize almost all the good things of AI. So it is going to intensify monopolization and intensify imperialism in coming years. And the good thing is that it will intensify all the contradictions of capitalism also, including inter-imperialist rivalries.
Yeah. Yeah. Next question by Mohit. Why consciousness in machines in silicon substrate is always compared to the nature of human consciousness? Can we not see that machine consciousness could be qualitatively different from human consciousness, hence a different concept of selfhood in AI systems? That's one part. And then there is another continuation. Since machine learning models are trained on real data extracted from the empirical world, Why can't we assign sensory grounding in multimodal LLMs, processing sound, images, and hence there is organic creativity like how humans have beyond next token prediction?
Okay, there are two questions here, or two different problems
Yeah.
here. The first one is about machine consciousness and how it can be, or can it be different, or should it be considered different to human consciousness. My point here is that there is no such thing as machine consciousness. Consciousness is the emergent property of the brain, of the human brain. We do not see, we have not encountered consciousness other than in animal brains. No other, of course, idealist, spiritualist philosophers and gurus, etc., have said that consciousness is an independent entity which comes to human beings from outside, etc., etc. But we know that these are all absurd. The only source, as far as we know, of consciousness is animal brain. So when we say consciousness, it is this kind of consciousness. See, what is called machine consciousness is, I have no idea regarding that. But I can say that this consciousness that we know, which is an emergent property of the most advanced form of matter, which we call human brain, cannot be produced in artificial intelligence. That is the first thing. And with that, I would like to make one more comment. And that comment is that with this huge growth of AI ideology, with the huge growth of computational functionalism, what has happened in scientific circles itself is that in the last 10 years, there has been a tremendous growth of idealist philosophy inside science. This is a very important new development, because scientists were always materialists. For especially in the last 100 years, scientists have always come out at materialists. Of course, mechanical materialists, not dialectical materialists, but the type of materialism advanced by the scientists were always mechanical materialism, bordering on positivism and empiricism. But now, a minority inside the scientific domain itself are now talking about idealism and talking about the fact that the problem with science is materialism. And they are calling for us to ditch materialism, especially with regard to consciousness. You can now, we can see papers and articles coming up from scientists saying that consciousness may be connected to the universal fabric of cosmos, etc., and all our individual consciousness may be connected to this universal consciousness. These things were propagated by spiritual absurdities, as spiritual absurdities 500 years ago. Now, these are propagated by scientists themselves. And this is coming as a reaction to the AI ideology in almost all cases, because the AI ideology is reducing human consciousness to a computational process. So as a counterweight of this, one part of scientists is leaning towards trans-idealism, bordering on spiritualism, saying that they are also doing the same thing. They are separating consciousness. I told you that computational functionalism separates consciousness from human brain. And these idealist scientists are also doing the same thing, but in the other way. So we see here that the real answer is only in dialectical materialism, and we will have to evolve a dialectical materialist understanding of AI and its specificities. That is one thing. The second part of the question that Mohit raised was regarding the training of AI systems, involving the sensual, sounds, pictures, etc., which will give a roundabout training for this, and which will probably do away with many limitations of AI systems. This has already been tried. It is already been tried, but the results have not been out. So we will have to wait for some time for the results of this process to come. It may introduce certain advantages to AI systems, but I doubt very much whether it will make any significant difference to the content of the AI system that we have, which is only that it automates intellectual labor. In that content, is it going to be different? I don't think so.
Yeah, sounds good. One question I have based on what you just mentioned,
Please,
comrade.
please.
Yeah, when you mentioned that the current day scientists are tending towards more of idealism, and also you used the word mechanical materialism tending towards positivism and something else. Could you
Yes.
elaborate a bit on that one, please?
Yes, yes. So scientists, uh, practitioners of science in the last century, in 20th century, have always tended to be materialists. They have based their philosophical or world outlook on matter because they are the ones who work with matter. So almost all scientific personalities, I am talking about creative scientific personalities here, not mediocre personalities. So almost all good scientists were materialists of some sort or the other. But this materialism that they have was a naive materialism based on the primacy of matter, and that reality can fully be explained by using mechanical interaction of this matter. So this is what, in Marxist sense, what Engels and Lenin called mechanical materialism. And this was the scientific, this was the philosophical orientation. This remains the main philosophical orientation of the scientist community, at least the scientist community who do creative science. So this also tends towards philosophical ideas like positivism and empiricism, which means that, you know, the scientists always look for empiric confirmations alone, and they don't take any other confirmation as truth. So scientists as a whole have tended towards these philosophical trends. But now I'm trying to say that the majority is still materialist, but a minority is breaking away and are coming up with idealist tendencies. This is a new development in the last 10 years, and it will be interesting to follow this development, what happens to that. But I think it is a consequence. I think more than that, it is a consequence of one, the contradictions of capitalism. Always when there is contradictions in the ruling class, then idealism happens to be on its growth. But other than that, the scientist community, this also seems to be a reaction to the crass reductionist ideology of consciousness studies, first of all, and machine learning and AI also.
Yeah, understood. I mean, on a funny note, I would like to say that there is one Telugu proverb here where the more you study, the more you lose your brain. So that's the kind of tendency these guys are going into, I guess, the 10%.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, one announcement just to make sure that everybody raises their questions or types their questions in the questions and information section, not in the voice channel, please. We saw one or two questions there, please. Yeah, now coming back to the next question. This is from Mohan Say. What could be the level and scale of layoffs due to the upsurge of AI? Is AI a short-term bubble that's going to burst soon?
There are two ways to see this. AI the financial clout of AI, the profit that AI companies are making, the employment opportunities that AI companies are generating, etc., is a bubble. And it has already burst. It is not going to burst, it has already burst. The effect is not palpable, but in another 2 to 3 years, the effect will be palpable, even in India. Because now even in India, you see almost all universities are running 10, 12, 15 batches of computer science programs with this AI bubble in mind, thinking that the AI boom will absorb all their graduates. Now that has happened for the first, this absorption has happened for the first 3 to 4 years, but it has stopped. In the last 2 years, it has dried up. The number of jobs in AI sector and computer science sector has dried up. And that is why I say that in this sense, the bubble has already burst. But in another way, if you see AI as a long-term development, AI as the project of automation or the generalization, extension of automation into intellectual domain also, in this sense, in this way, if you see it as AI as an automating trend, then it is not a bubble. It is a real technical development, which is not going to burst anytime soon, which is a real technological advancement, and it will advance into almost all sectors of service capitalism in the next 5 to 10 years. Almost everything that can be automated in intellectual labor will be automated, and in my opinion, it should be automated. If a machine can do it, then why would a human being bother to do it at all? So all domains of intellectual labor, which can be automated, will be automated, and should be automated. So in that sense, it is not a bubble at all. But in the sense that it is going to bring a lot of profits, it is going to boost up the economy, in that sense, it is a bubble and it is already burst.
Yeah, great, thanks. Next question, Tejaswi. How is AI used to reproduce bourgeois ideology through arithmetic control of media, discourse, and behavior?
That is a very interesting question. In fact, try asking ChatGPT about capitalism. Anybody who does this will get the answer to this question on its own. In fact, I have tried it. I strongly suggest that every one of you should try that also. It will try to convince you, ChatGPT or Gemini or any other LLM will try to convince you that even though capitalism seems to be bad, even though the present system seems to be in big mess, in huge crisis, in huge contradictions, still there are ways to overcome all these inside the system itself. I tried asking ChatGPT whether working class revolution is the only way out of the crisis. It tried to convince me otherwise. So definitely, as all the LLMs, all the AI systems are trained on available biased literature, it will again reinforce that bias through the answers that it gives. It is not doing that out of consciousness or out of actual bias. It is just that the data that it has been trained on are biased. Because capitalism and the ideology of capitalism is the hegemonic ideology. 80%, 90% of the academic and other literature, media literature that is being pumped out now is seeped in this ideology. These poor LLMs are trained on this ideology, so that ideology is going to come out. That is very clear. So in that sense, LLMs are going to reinforce capitalist ideology, because there will come, it has already come, there will come an age, and it has already come, where people blindly believe what LLM gives them. So in that case, LLMs will reinforce the capitalist ideology, and people will also be convinced by this LLM. This is a huge problem, but Marxists have always believed that reinforcing this ideology through literary means is one thing, but the real life conditions will convince the toiling class that the ideology is wrong. So obviously, there will be a huge spurt in the strength of bourgeois ideology through LLMs. But real material conditions will convince the toilers, will convince the working class that this is not true. That is our hope.
Great. That's a good answer. Good question. A related question I have, comrade. So, are we saying here that the progressive or the revolutionary literature is not there enough in the on the internet, or are we saying that they are consciously selecting the non-revolutionary, non-progressive literature to feed into these LLMs?
No, as far as I know, there is no conscious effort to neglect revolutionary literature. There is no conscious effort. But if you see the percentage of real revolutionary or real radical literature that comes out now or over the past 100 years, it will be a very small percentage, right? Because as capitalism is the hegemonic ideology, the majority of the literature that is produced from the point of view of Marxist political economy, Marxist ideology are junk. And this is what is being fed into the LLMs. The revolutionary literature, radical literature is also fed. So if you quiz LLMs regarding niceties of Marxist theory, it will give you correct information. But when you frame a generic question to it, the weight of the training material of the conservative sort is very high compared to the radical sort. That is not the problem of LLM or the training process. That is the problem of the amount of conservative literature that is produced in the world. So in that sense, there will be definitely a bias of LLM towards conservatism.
Yeah, understand. Yeah, next question is from the ID 314I. Is AI postmodern as it is not yet linked to the real world, real material world?
This, in fact, this postmodernism itself is an ideology, is a hoax. So AI in that sense is not postmodern or post-industrial or whatever. It is a real materialist process itself. And we cannot say that it is not linked to material things. What is happening in AI is completely material. The result of AI is also material. There is nothing immaterial here or mystical here. But what I tried to show you over the two talks is that what AI do not possess is not materiality, but intelligence. Intelligence in the human sense, consciousness in the human sense. So what it is doing is a fully material process. It can be characterized in a material way, in a scientific way, fully. So I would say that there is nothing, quote unquote, postmodern in AI. It's just a scientific and technological development.
Yeah, thank you. This is from Gopal61. You may answer if you feel it is relevant, comrade. A very informative talk by Mr. Bipin. He touched on almost all important points except only one. How the rise and expansion of the Chinese model of development under CCP will impact the future path of the world.
I mean, I cannot see any direct relevance with AI. Is the questioner thinking about the developments, the development of large language models in China, like DeepSeek, or
Yeah, I'm assuming so. I'm assuming that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking it's relevant
okay,
to
in
the
that
same.
case,
Yeah.
if the question is about the scientific development of AI happening in China, including DeepSeek, there is very little difference between in scientific matters and what's being done in DeepSeek and what's being done in ChatGPT or in Gemini, etc. There are finer differences, and these finer differences may have an effect on its actual performance. But all in all, as a technological development, it is the same. So there is not much difference. And if it is a political economic question, then I think we have answered this question in some detail in the last talk that I gave here on imperialism, Prabhat Patnaik, when we dealt with imperialism and how China is a capitalist and imperialist force, etc. So you may refer to that for more details.
Yeah, thank you, comrade. In fact, I got a curious question based on this question and previous explanation on the Tejasvi's question. So the DeepSeek, as I understand, I mean, this is publicized well, right? The Tiananmen Square episode, if we ask that question to DeepSeek, it gives very funny answers, right? So my question here is twofold. One is it very biased in that sense? Is one part of the question. The other part is, going back to Tejasvi's question, is DeepSeek, because probably their input is more assuming, quote unquote, assuming it was part of the Chinese communist ideology of the past, may not be present. Does it have more favorable answers towards the revolutionary thought and progress?
That is an interesting question. I haven't tried it on DeepSeek. I haven't tried these questions on DeepSeek. It would be an interesting exercise to try the same question in ChatGPT, Gemini, and DeepSeek to see if there is any, revolutionary orientation, any increase in revolutionary orientation in DeepSeek. But I would be personally very surprised if it was true. Of course, if you ask peripheral questions, abstract questions on revolution, need for revolution, etc., non-committal answers would come from DeepSeek, I am assuming, of the need for revolution and such and such. But if you ask real, concrete, political economic question regarding Marxism, I would say that there won't be much difference. But to be frank, I have not tried it out, and it will be a very interesting exercise to try it out.
Yeah, definitely.
So the first part of your question, I forgot. The first part, I answered the second part. The first part of the question, I forgot. What was it? Can you remind me?
Yeah, the first part was whether it is biased based on the example of what it throws out on the Tiananmen Square episode.
Okay. So we will have to try it out. I have not tried it out like that, but it will be a good exercise. But this bias, see, what it does is that if some questions are raised, it is programmed. I think this is my assumption. This is my hypothesis. All the LLMs are programmed to bypass its training and interpolation things and gives you standard answers. For example, this has its own good ideas also, because if somebody asks a ChatGPT or an LLM about ways to commit suicide, then it cannot directly give answers from its training data, because the training data may have different ideas for that, but that is not to be given. So it will bypass all these things and give a standard data with the well-being of the questioner in mind. So this can also be done, but this can also be done for ideological purposes. So maybe DeepSeek has been programmed to say some particular things about the tragedy, rather than freely interpolating from its data. So this, of course, will introduce bias into the system, but this is conscious bias. It's not unconscious bias which comes from data. This is consciously programmed bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Next question is from Pattam Siva. How will be our future in India with AI?
Future in India is going to be very bad. I think so. Because right now itself, we see that in the domain of intellectual labor, things are looking extremely bad. There is unemployment. There is precarious. Short-term employment. There is huge alienation, anxiety among intellectual workers, and the coming of AI and the development of AI is only going to intensify these things. So almost everywhere in India, in almost all intellectual domains, may it be in teaching, may it be in research, may it be in doctors, management, almost all other domains in intellectual labor, there is huge alienation and anxiety and no sense of security at all. And this is one of the main reasons why white-collar workers, especially of intellectual nature, are joining right-wing politics en masse. So I think this is going to intensify, and that is why there is a great need to spread radical revolutionary literature among white-collar workers, because otherwise they are easy fodder for right-wing politics. And it will intensify in coming years because of the development of AI. That is what I think.
Yeah, unfortunate. Thanks, comrade. Next question is by Adesh. You mentioned that every job that can be automated should be automated. Isn't the essence to humanity is work/labor? Artists get inspiration from labor, so does scientific innovation, which AI can facilitate but not lead. If not, then what? Then won't it lead to a Wall-E? He's referring to a movie-like situation where we will just sit and consume, because even the artist works like writing and art is automated. Even if it is not really art, it exists in the digital space once it is generated by someone.
That is true. My claim is that creativity cannot be automated. My claim, and what I wanted to prove using these lectures, is that real creative labor, that kind of labor that is worthy of human beings, whether it be manual, whether it be intellectual, cannot be automated. So, of course, what is produced by LLMs as intellectual labor, whether it is scientific papers or poems or novels, these are junk. We really understand these are junk. So what I mean is that all these kind of things which can be automated belong to the set of mundane intellectual activities which should be automated anyway. And that, I claim, will liberate the time and leisure for us human beings to do creative things that cannot be automated. So even if LLMs or other AI softwares can generate all kinds of paintings that you want. There is no creative element in any of these paintings. It's just juxtaposition of available paintings, which is not creation. So if you need real creative paintings, there should be human labor involved. Of course, we can take help from the AI or from any other software. There are painters who do online, you use online tools, who does it online. So all help can be taken. But the final creator, the director of this creative activity will be a human being. So that is the sense in which I say that everything that can be automated probably should be automated, which will liberate us to do creative science and art.
Yeah. There is a comment by Jay Prakash. Not only Tiananmen, DeepSeek couldn't even answer about Mao. In this political sense, it is worth. There is a picture in the question information channel. One can see that.
Okay, I will. Oh, okay. Who is Mao? Sorry, that's beyond my current scope. Let's talk about this is consciously coded. Okay, it's not coming from the training data of DeepSeek. No way. This is consciously coded. It bypasses all the training data and then tells it to print it. So it's very, very interesting. Maybe
Yeah.
ChatGPT and Gemini have these kind of things. It won't be this direct, but maybe it has conscious coded things also. We don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
No more questions right now, but I have loads of questions based on what we have talked. Anyway. First of all, one question I have is ideology of AI that you used through computational functionalism. Is it
Mhm.
really a used terminology by academia or hegemonic class, or is it something that you came up with? It's a curious uh, terminology. First of all, when I first read this title, I was a little bit confused.
Are you talking about the phrase computational functionalism?
No. The ideology of AI itself. I mean, the word ideology of artificial intelligence that you spoke about. Yeah.
That I think maybe some others have used it also, but I have not seen it. I came up with it because in literature, AI skeptics have used many words for AI. Yesterday, I told you some of the words. It has been called a hoax. It has been called a con. It has been called a heist, a fraud, etc., etc. But as a dialectical materialist and as a Marxist, we have to talk about the hegemonic view of AI being its ideology. So there is a science of AI, and then there is an ideology of AI, and then there is a constant effort by the scientists and the corporate bosses to picture or to reduce the science or to paint the science of AI in terms of the ideology. So then I thought that the hegemonic view of about AI can be and should be characterized as its ideology.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Thank
Yes.
you.
So there are things that I did not have time to go into regarding this. For example, there is this question: if this is the ideology of AI, then what is the material motivation for this ideology? What is the material basis that is giving rise to this ideology? This is a very interesting question, which I did not have time to develop here. But I am in the process of writing a long article regarding this. I will be including this point in that article.
Fantastic. Thanks, comrade, because I was thinking the same, like, this is more of a science, not an ideology. So you came up, coined a good concept here. So we will be keen to read that. Yeah.
Ha ha ha. Yes, yes.
Then there is a question by Adesh. Does prompt engineering jailbreaks work on this?
Sorry, I did not understand that. Can you?
Does prompt engineering jailbreaks work on this? I too am not
Okay,
clear.
I mean, he's talking about this picture that Jay Prakash posted.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So I think it's a technical term.
Oh, yeah,
I'm hearing it for the first time, so I have no idea regarding that.
that's right. I mean, that is the post. You are right. It is a reply to Jay Prakash's comment on Mao.
Yes, 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 yes.
Right. Then the question from give me 1 minute. Patem Shiva. With
Mm-hmm.
most of the working class in unorganized sector being illiterates, what is going to happen to them?
I mean, it is true that working class, unorganized sectors, there is a large amount of illiterates in it, but their life will also be changed by AI. They don't have to use, they may not be able to use it directly, but then the automation that goes on in the service sector because of this, and all the contradictions that comes on this, all the crisis that comes on it, will definitely affect them also, and affect them in the worst manner. In the same time, they won't be able to derive any positive effect from these technological developments also. So that is the unfortunate situation that we have right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there is a related question. What is the impact of AI in unemployment in different sectors? Probably it's a broadened question. It
Mm-hmm.
may relate to the same question and also previous question of the impact in India, right? So you may want to
Yes,
add
yes,
more. Yeah.
yes. The uh, statistics on unemployment, on AI induced unemployment, is still coming out. It is too early to say that, but my idea would be, or my hunch on this would be, that there will be huge unemployment problems in different sectors, because whenever automation comes up, then there is going to be unemployment. How the system will deal with this unemployment is a problem, because it is already in crisis. It is already in crisis. Intensified contradictions, wars, monopoly, imperialist problems. Right now, as we speak, 3 or 4 wars are going on. Each of these wars are very dangerous for the system. So, with the unemployment rising, and with right-wing forces in almost all country making use of this unemployment, the system, I would say, will be stretched to its limits very, very soon.
Yeah. There is a question by Prabhakar Kasturi from YouTube. What are the impacts we are going to face in education system about curriculum and robo and values in education?
Again, in educational system also, it is it's a classical case of intellectual labor. Being the teacher, or being the faculty member in educational system, it is going to go through, I think, large scale changes due to the um, development and introduction of AI. For example, for the last 50 years or even more, the standard idea, one of the standard things that teachers did was to give assignment for students. Now it is an absurd idea. You cannot give students assignment. There is no need. There is no point in giving them assignments, because the assignments can directly be put in an AI machine and then it will completely answer that. So this is a very simple thing. This is a very simple example that I have. Like this, in educational system and also in healthcare, there are going to be complete changes, full changes, from teaching to examination to curriculum development. Huge changes are going to be there. Almost all these changes will produce unemployment, of course, and almost all these changes will produce crisis in education sector. So, but objectively speaking, it will have positive effects also on education due to automation of mundane tasks. And even the teaching process, I think, will undergo revolutionary changes in the next 5 to 10 years due to the development and introduction of AI.
Yeah. I have one question while if we get any more questions. Great. So based on all these, at least the way we are heading, especially in India and several other countries, there will be a lot of job loss and stuff like that. I was listening to one lecture sometime back in LSE about the universal basic income. So I'm just trying to understand, is that something like a way forward where the service sector is taken over by this AI and manufacturing sector, as you said, is almost taken over by the industry automation. So the profits are consolidated, monopolies coming in, and we get into this mode of universal basic income?
That is, logically speaking, if capitalists are logical people, then they would do this, because they know that otherwise the system is going to go down. But capitalism, being capitalism, will never do this. This is the universal basic income is a liberal socialist idea, which has been tried out in many Nordic countries and has worked there. But even analysis from Nordic countries suggests that it is no longer practical. Why isn't it practical? Because now, see, this is a circular logic that we have here. Now, what is the necessity of universal basic income right now? The necessity is that there is large-scale unemployment, there is automation in almost all sectors, human beings are finding it very difficult to find a job, etc. So that is why you need a universal basic income. But who is going to pay for this universal basic income? The money to pay this universal basic income has to come from the profit of the capitalists as taxes. There is no other way. So you have to tax the capitalist, and capitalists have to be ready to part with their hard-earned profit. Now they will be ready to do that, at least to a certain extent, if the profit that they get is sizable. When the rate of profit is very large, especially in the 1950s or 1960s, these welfare capitalist steps can, up to a particular step, be forced out of capitalists. But this automation in almost all sectors will decrease the rate of profit, and it will decrease the profit that accrues to these capitalists. So when there is a downward trend already in capitalism, in capitalist profit, the capitalist class will not be ready to part with what little profit that they have to be used for universal basic income. So even though logically it is a good step, so even though naively you can suggest that if you use or if you do universal basic income, the problems may be solved. Practically, it can never be realized because of the contradictions and constraints of capitalism. Inside capitalism, especially in crisis situations like this, it will never become a practical way out of it. The only practical and non-utopian way out of this is to transcend the system. Almost everything else is either impractical or utopian. And it is a real, contradiction or curiosity that in spite of all these things, they call Marxists utopians.
Yes, interesting. Yeah, thank you, comrade. I don't think we have any questions, though I can ask all night. So let us stop here.
So this is yes, you are right, because this is a very wide field and this is a very developing field. So there are many questions which I could not delve into. So that is true. Probably many of these questions will be answered in my article, hopefully.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. So members requested for reference material on this subject and appreciated the lecture. Several of them appreciated your time and lecture, comrade. Given this, could you give concluding remarks based on the yesterday's and today's session and the kind of questions you received, and probably giving a final message around this whole topic and in general towards the Marxist thought, connecting it to the Marxist?
Sure. So the basic idea behind these talks was to view the new technological development, in fact, revolutionary technological development regarding artificial intelligence from a Marxist viewpoint, and to give a socio-historic and economic characterization of what is called artificial intelligence. So for this, we in doing this analysis, we have come up with certain conclusions, certain preliminary conclusions, out of which the first one is that AI is not a project of recreating human thought in machines. That is not what is happening, even though the original goal of AI was that, and even though the ideology of AI is still that. The reality of AI, the scientific reality of AI and socio-economic reality of AI is that it is a project for automation of intellectual labor. The second point regarding this is that this automation of intellectual labor is not creating any thinking, intelligent or conscious agents. It is working on the basis of Marx's idea of general social labor and product of the social brain, and it is using deep learning based networks in interpolating and correlating these products of social brain to do automation of intellectual labor, which is a very startling technological advancement and which has to be appreciated. The third point is regarding the ideology of AI. And we saw today that the ideology of AI, which comes under the name of computational functionalism, is a new age form of mechanical functionalism, which was there in the 17th century, and which is nothing short of absurdity. And the fourth one is the political economic aspects of AI, the main motivation of AI being the shift of capital to service sector and the need to automate the service sector. And in automating the service sector, this new development is actually objectively will cause the rate of profit to go down in the service sector also, creating the crisis of profit or spreading the crisis of profit into more and more sectors. This will intensify contradictions of capitalism and will lead sooner rather than later to whole full-fledged crisis. The final point that can be made is that AI is a technological development which directly aids socialization of production and which intensifies all the existing contradictions of capitalism, thus paving the way for transcending of capitalism itself.
Great. Thank you very much, Comrade. Yeah, just as a reminder, please do provide the reference materials because the teams have been very curious to get any materials that you will provide.
Yes. So I will, yesterday, some have asked for the quotes that from Capital. So I will give you, I will post the link to the specific parts and chapters of Capital and Grundrisse, and also I will give some literature regarding AI that I have used. I will be posting it in the text channel.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, okay. We will have billions of articles, but very specific to what you have covered, that would be really.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. I will do that.
Thank you. Thanks. Once again, Comrade. So as we have gone through this 2 days of artificial intelligence and its say the true colors, let me put it that way. Today we have gone through the roots, the seeds of the AI itself, starting from Descartes and Thomas Hobbes in the 17th century, and then moving on from there to 1950s, where we have there was this concept of computational functionalism that Comrade talked about, which is the overall ideology of AI, as he put it, that is driving this whole thought process is one aspect. And then he talked about the socio-economic factors, which he correlated the industrial sector's automation to the intellectual automation of the service sector and how they have evolved because of the falling profits, as Marx said, with the automation process. So connecting all these dots together very well, and also he brought up the urgency of us transcending this capitalism. Otherwise, there is a dire concern of the existence of the humanity itself. So it's been a great speech, Comrade, and we have thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much once again, and thank you all for patiently listening, spending your time last 2 days. We have the next sessions on 11th and 12th October. Details shall be communicated soon through our channels. Thank you once again, everyone. Have a good night. You can press the red button and then exit.
Thank you very much. Thank you.